Why you wouldn't last 24 hours as a Denisovan, history to fall asleep. Introduction. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine a world before cities, before writing, before civilizations as we know them. A time when the earth was colder, harsher, and wilder. A time when humans were not alone, when multiple species of humans walked the earth side by side. Among them were the mysterious Denisovans. Tonight, we'll travel back in time, not just to learn about them, but to imagine what it would be like if you were suddenly dropped into their world. Could you survive a single day? The truth is, you probably wouldn't last 24 hours. And here's why. Chapter 1. Who were the Denisovans? The Denisovans are one of the most fascinating branches of the human family tree. Unlike Neanderthals, who left behind caves full of tools and art, Denisovans remain mysterious. We know them mostly through fragments, bits of bone, a tooth, and genetic traces buried deep in our DNA. They lived in parts of Siberia, Central Asia, and possibly Southeast Asia. Cold, mountainous regions were their home. They were strong, stocky, and adapted to high altitudes. Some modern humans, especially people in Tibet, Papua New Guinea, and parts of Southeast Asia, still carry Denisovan DNA today, giving them advantages in oxygen use and immunity. But you, a modern person, used to warm clothes, technology, and grocery stores, if you suddenly woke up in their world, things would go very differently. Chapter 2. The environment, freezing cold, endless struggle. The first reason you wouldn't survive as a Denisovan is simple: the climate. Imagine waking up in Siberia 100,000 years ago. It's not just winter, it's the Ice Age. The air is biting cold, the ground is frozen solid, and snow covers the landscape. You don't have a coat. You don't have shoes. You don't even have fire at your fingertips. The Denisovans knew how to survive here because their bodies and skills had adapted over generations. You'd start shivering within minutes, losing body heat, and within hours, hypothermia would set in. Chapter 3. The food problem. Nothing comes easy. Now let's imagine you somehow push through the cold. Your stomach growls. What would you eat? There are no supermarkets, no restaurants, no snacks in your pocket. Your only options are what you can find or hunt. The Denisovans ate wild animals, berries, roots, and sometimes fish. But hunting in the Ice Age was no joke. Mammoths, woolly rhinos, and giant deer roamed these lands, but they were dangerous to kill. Even small animals like rabbits required skill, traps, and weapons. You, empty-handed, would starve. By the end of 24 hours, your energy would drain, and weakness would set in. Chapter 4. The predators, hunted instead of hunter. As darkness falls, another threat arrives: predators. Saber-toothed cats, cave lions, wolves, and giant bears roamed the same world as Denisovans. Unlike you, Denisovans had spears, stone tools, and the numbers of a group. They understood animal behavior and worked together for defense. You'd be an easy target. With no weapon, no shelter, and no fire, you'd be prey. The growl of a cave lion in the dark would remind you just how vulnerable you really are. Chapter 5. The physical difference. They were built for survival. The Denisovans were not just like us. They were stronger, stockier, and built for the brutal environments they lived in. Genetic studies show they had adaptations for high altitudes, meaning they could thrive in the thin air of mountains where you'd be gasping for breath. Imagine being dropped into the cold Siberian mountains with no training. You'd struggle to breathe, your chest would ache, and dizziness would overtake you. Meanwhile, a Denisovan child could run across the snow without a problem. Chapter 6. The social struggle. You don't belong. Even if you somehow found a Denisovan group, survival wouldn't be guaranteed. They lived in tight-knit clans, relying on trust and cooperation. You would be a stranger. You wouldn't know their language, their customs, or their ways of hunting and gathering. At best, they might see you as useless. At worst, they might see you as a threat. In a world where resources were scarce, outsiders weren't always welcomed with open arms. Chapter 7. Fire, shelter, and darkness. Fire was life. It gave warmth, safety, and cooked food. Denisovans mastered fire making through skill and experience. You, however, with no lighter, no matches, and no survival training, would fail quickly. When night falls, the cold becomes unbearable. The Ice Age nights stretched long and dark. Without a cave, without fire, without animal skins for warmth, you wouldn't survive until dawn. Chapter 8. Disease and Injury. Let's say you survived cold, hunger, and predators. Another enemy lurks: disease. In the prehistoric world, infections were deadly. A simple cut could turn fatal without medicine. The Denisovans, through generations, developed immunity to local diseases. You, dropped into their world, would likely fall ill within hours, whether from tainted water, raw meat, or exposure to new bacteria. Chapter 9. Why they survived and you wouldn't. The Denisovans lived for thousands of years because every aspect of their lives was shaped by survival. Their bodies, their communities, their knowledge of the land, all of it was perfectly tuned for the Ice Age world. You, on the other hand, live in comfort, relying on technology for survival. Take that away, and you're fragile. The Ice Age doesn't forgive fragility. Chapter 10. The legacy they left behind. Although the Denisovans disappeared tens of thousands of years ago, they live on in us. Their DNA still helps people in high altitudes breathe. It still shapes immunity in certain populations. In a way, Denisovans survive within modern humans. But for you, traveling back in time, survival wouldn't be possible. You would be out of your depth, unprepared, and overwhelmed. Conclusion: the final 24 hours. So, why wouldn't you last 24 hours as a Denisovan? Because their world was harsh, cold, and unforgiving. Because predators hunted the night, food was scarce, and fire was precious. Because their bodies were built for survival in ways yours is not. If you found yourself in the Ice Age, among Denisovans, your day would end not with triumph but with silence. And maybe that's the lesson. We survive today not because we are stronger, but because those who came before us, like the Denisovans, paved the way. So, as you drift off to sleep, remember, the Denisovans may be gone, but their story is still written within us.